the more success that you kind of achieve, the less human you are. And I think when you have a moment, of a fall on your face moment, it reminds not only like yourself, but everybody that we're all just human and we're all just trying our best. Right. And if you can say that you're doing your best, like that's all you can do, because what your best and my best is very different.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Solivan, and this is Breaking Precedent. Not only did I found TaskRabbit, one of the pioneers of the gig economy, I am now a venture capitalist backing the next generation of rebels. In this podcast, we dive deep into the stories of innovators who are pushing societal boundaries, challenging precedents, and setting new ones in their fields. My guest today is Nastia Liukin, Olympic all-around gymnastics champion, 5-time medalist, and someone who has redefined what it means to win with grace, fall with purpose, and rise on her own terms. She's gone from child prodigy to household name to entrepreneur, sportscaster, and creative force. And in the process, she's broken just about every expectation the world has tried to put on her. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for being here today on Breaking Precedent.
Thank you for having me. It's been so long since we've seen each other or even spoken, and we go way back, I guess.
We do go way back. But before we kick things off, since it has been a while since we've seen each other, I wanted to open up the episode with an icebreaker that we both can answer. And it is, so you and I, we both had careers that required obsessive focus. What is something that you gave up in those early years that you're reclaiming now? I think for me, I remember being like, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, building TaskRabbit and thinking like, I cannot start a family right now. Like I can't, like it is too stressful. I need to be super focused. And now I'm mid 40s and I have 4 children. Four children.
By the way, that's incredible. It's so congratulations on many things, your success, but also, I think your personal life too. I think when you're such like a go-getter, like both of us we bonded over a lot of things, I think, and that being one of them. And yeah, it's especially being, a female in a world where, you want to have it all and, you want to do it all. It's hard, but it's not impossible. And like you were just walking proof of that. So you're like such an inspiration, I know, to so many, myself included, and just to be able to see what you've done and the success that you had, but then also, still have the other side of, I guess, life and everything. So yeah, I love that though. I mean,
it's very sweet. Thank you.
It's also, I feel like it's interesting because I feel like society kind of puts this like timeline on the world, us women especially.
Yeah.
And so like you mentioned, like the, late 20s, early 30s, and you're kind of thinking like this should be the time, but it's like, who says that? It's like, where did that come? I mean, I get it, but I think everybody's on their own journey and path. And I think if I've learned anything, especially more so, I think in the last like 5 to 10 years, more so than, the first chapter of my life. And it's so true. Like there is no like right or wrong. Somebody told me that actually yesterday. And I was like, oh, because my whole life I was always coached, right? Like my dad was my coach. And so anything that he said, I just was like, that's the right thing to do. And so then in life, I look for somebody to tell me like, not necessarily what to do all the time, but like a right or wrong. And there really isn't one. It's like, it's whatever it is right, like for you. Anyways, it kind of just to go off of what you said. Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard in a world that,
it is.
We're around it 24/7 with social and, just the way of the world.
So I love that. So you feel like you've been able to get perspective on kind of walking your own path. That's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I mean, and I guess to answer, I'll go to kind of like echo what you said for sure. And then I think to kind of take it maybe a step further, I would even say, life, like literally all of life. I had success, this like very crazy Olympic success so early in my life where I was 18 and I achieved my quote unquote lifelong dream, but I like didn't know who I was. I didn't know anything about life. And I remember it didn't bother me. I don't regret a single, moment of it, but I definitely, the sacrifices, there wasn't just one thing. I mean, it was everything from, I was in the gym like Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Day, and New Year's holidays. And so that, my dad being my coach, of course, it was like good and bad, because that meant like he also couldn't have family time, but then we were together. So it was like, at least we're spending, the holidays together in the gym. But then also, didn't go to public school and, making friends outside of the gym, people that weren't my teammates, dating. I mean, every single aspect of my life was like, I was so not advanced, but like I had done things by the time I was 18 that a lot of people, don't get a chance to do ever. And I'm so grateful for that. But then at the same time, I was so far back in just normal things that 18-year-olds do and the way that they live. And yeah, so moving to New York and going to school at NYU, like that was truly the best thing I could have done, because it just like threw me into like, here's life. Nobody cares who you are. And that's kind of what I needed. Like I just needed, not that I like really like lived and like wanted that necessarily, but growing up in Texas and, everyone was so proud and excited, which I'm so grateful for, but it kind of forced me to stay in this identity, of just being defined by that. And so then moving to New York, I had no friends. I knew nobody. I was had been 7 years since I even was in school. And I just remember looking at the graphing calculator and being like, what is this? So I think it was life, like truly. Yeah. And I think,
all these little aspects.
All of that goes into it. And I know that's such a generic, broad answer, but it's really, there's not one thing that, I didn't sacrifice. I mean, it was, sleep, it was nutrition, it was, just literally anything and everything. And again, I don't regret it for a single second. I think it obviously achieving a quote unquote lifelong dream, but at the same time, the things that I was able to learn from it, some things like really are helpful. And then some things are not, because I try to like pretend in life that, if I work harder or longer or more or something, I'm not trying to win an Olympic gold medal anymore. So it's like the boundaries, I guess, of having that work-life or balance is kind of challenging, I think, at times.
Well, it's challenging for everyone indeed. And I think you're right. Everyone has their own path. There's no right or wrong. So I want to dive into all of it. And I think to start, what I'm most interested in is kind of rewinding to the foundation. You inherited this legacy. You created your own legacy as well. You were born into this gymnastics dynasty, right? But in the early days, your parents didn't want you to follow that path. What made you kind of fight against that and step into it anyway?
It's so interesting because for them, they really wanted, I'm the only child, and they wanted me to find like my joy and my happiness and my passion. And like ever since I can remember, they really instilled that in me. And unfortunately for them, that was gymnastics. Not necessarily like unfortunately, but I think because, they had both done it, especially, both world and Olympic champion gymnasts. And I can't honestly relate or imagine the pressure that they felt. When I was younger and like a little kid, there's no pressure. It's all fun and games. But to coach your own daughter at the Olympic Games, I think back to that. I think the older I get too, the more I'm like, I don't think I could have done that. It's like, it's crazy trying to put myself in his shoes and in their shoes. But they were just so adamant about me finding my passion. And they immediately saw, I never wanted to leave the gym. I tried to sleep in my leotard every single night. Like I literally would go to bed in my leotard, and my mom would have to like
so cute,
carefully take it out. And I was like, no. and they also, at such an early age saw that I had a God-given talent, and they were not going to take that away from me, but they certainly weren't going to like push me or force me to do it. Like it had to be my dreams and my goals, and they were there and would guide me and help me if I wanted that. But I had to almost prove to them that like I want to do it for myself. And I think that's so important. Like I don't have kids, but just in life, like even for yourself, like you can't do anything, whether it's a job, a career, a sport, if like for the wrong reasons. Like you have
So
to
true.
truly love what you do. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be hard days and hard, tough times where you want to quit and you just are like, what am I doing? But at the core, I think like the importance of having something you truly believe in and that you're passionate in, like that is key. Like it's the key to life. It's the key to jobs, relationships, like anything. That's what kind of gets you through, I think, the hard times.
Yeah. I mean, it is really incredible, the special bond you have with your family around this love of the sport and the craft of it. And they came here to the US, right? I mean, no money, no English. You were a newborn.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was still training and competing. I was born in Moscow and he trained away from like the city and then would come home on weekends. So he didn't know what he got himself into until like we got on the plane to the United States. And I was just like running up and down the aisles, like at 2 years old. And my
doing
mom was
cartwheels.
like, she's all yours. Everyone always asks like, well, why did they move? And it was for multiple reasons. But I think the two main ones were, they had their own dream to open up a gymnastics school one day and coach their own athletes to becoming world and Olympic champion gymnasts. They never imagined or ever wanted it to be their own daughter. Obviously, it was a combination of that. And then with me, they just wanted to give me the best possible life that they could. And they kind of knew, or they thought that that would be here in the United States.
How do you feel like that sort of starting line, right? I mean, as an immigrant and starting here so young, what do you feel like you absorbed from that history, that inherited generational history?
I mean, I think it's so interesting because, when you're young, like it's just, you don't know anything different, and you don't know a different way, and you don't I had no idea that they had, no money and just like a dream. They couldn't speak English. They, tried to go to the bank to get a loan and like brought their medals because like they didn't have anything to show. And they were just like, yeah, no, that doesn't work here. And,
right.
I think again, the older I get, the more, not that I didn't appreciate it then, but you put yourself in that position and think like me doing that. Gosh, I mean, my mom had me when she was so young, but I mean, it would have been like over 10, 15 years already. And having a teenager at this point and moving and not speaking the language, and you're, raising a baby, like that's one thing. And then you're trying to start a business. And I remember I didn't even really know that, like they told me this later, but I was always really into like stuffed animals. I was never really into like dolls or Barbies for some reason. And I don't know if you remember like at the malls where they used to have like the Disney stores, and in the back they had like this like
stuffies,
ring. Yes, all
stuffies.
the stuffed animals. Yes. And
yes,
I would just run there
Oh my
and
God.
I would want to sit there for hours. And my parents, like every single time, like they couldn't afford to buy a stuffed animal because they were like pretty expensive at the Disney store, well, especially then. And they would have to drag me out and, I would cry and like, I didn't understand, but then I like got over it until like the next time. And so I remember like I was probably 6 or 7. And I remember one day my dad came home from, he would be at the gym later than I ever was. And he came home and it was like, well, it was life size to me then, but it was it was Pumbaa from The Lion King. And
my God.
Was like this, like, and I just was like in heaven. Like it just made my day. And
amazing.
I still have it.
Do you?
Stuffed away, like, in an attic. But it was such a moment of, they hadn't made it like really, but in their minds and in my mind, like they did, because like that, like him being able to buy a stuffed animal for me that I was just so excited to get, like it was the little things like that I was just like, that's all I needed, and I was happy. I didn't really even need that, but I was, happy before that, happier after that. But it was little things like that I think, looking back, it's like, I can't imagine being in their shoes and, just going through the process of that. And honestly, even me being in the gym, they couldn't afford, a babysitter or a nanny or anything. And so I was like totally fine with that. I had no idea that was even a thing. Like I was like, this is so cool. I get to stay here longer than any of my friends. I get, they were all jealous that I was in the gym all the time. I think I just had a mentality of like life is great, you know, and I think that a lot of that has to do with like how, you know, the people around you kind of position it for you, especially as a child. And so, you know, they were just always so positive and so like hardworking, and you know, they built the gym like with their hands, like they couldn't,
Wow.
you know, they didn't know anybody. And so I think every like step was like a success. And I think that so early on, you know, I think I've gotten worse at this as I've gotten older, but early on, we really celebrated, you know, the small wins, like the little things, the stuffed animals. And so I think, you know, a lot of times I go back to that just and think about it. And I think that's, you know, the world that we all live in now. You put a check by it and you move on, right? And it's like, okay, what's next? And so being able to pause for a moment. I don't believe in failures. I just believe in like lessons. So whether it's, you know, another lesson that you learn, I think it's important to pause sometimes.
So you said I was probably the least athletic person to become the most decorated gymnast in the world. What did you have to tap into when your body didn't fit that typical mold?
Yeah, it's interesting because all sports are so unique, but I think especially gymnastics, you know, when you think about it, you think of like powerful and strong and like tumbling and flipping and all those things. And that was like really where I struggled because everyone always said I was like the perfect like combination of both my mom and my dad. And so my mom was actually a rhythmic gymnast. And so, like super flexible, super artistic, graceful, you know, so she didn't do like flips. It was all like with the ribbon and the hoop and the clubs and all of that. And then my dad was an artistic gymnast. So the same that I did. And he was literally known for like his power, his strength, like a daredevil, like was the first in the world to do a triple back on the floor and it's named after him. Like things like that, wow. That it's just like unheard of kind of things. And that was him. And so, you know, I was like smack dab in the middle because, you know, I was never as powerful and strong as some of my other teammates. I really had to work. A lot of gymnasts, I guess, like they have to work really hard on their flexibility and like sit in their splits for like hours. And I could do it in my sleep. Like I got that from my mom. It was genetic. Thank goodness. But the strength part, like the amount of time that everyone was spending on like flexibility, I was like running every day. I was doing an hour and a half of conditioning every single day. And it like that was the worst part. Not worse, but it was like, it was hard. It was really hard.
It was the hard part. Yeah.
It was almost like you're going against, you know, what your body like actually just is. And I wanted that like goal, the outcome so badly that I knew that I had to do all those things in order to be the best version of myself that I could be, not necessarily to just I had to do this to win, but I had to do it in order to be the strongest that I could be. Because I knew I was never going to be as strong as, you know, most of my teammates. And that's kind of the greatest and coolest part about gymnastics too, is that, you know, we're not like sprinting against the clock and like whoever touches the wall first. It's literally you're doing so many different skills and routines. You have to figure out what works best for you. And so, yeah, but I'm really not athletic. Like everyone always laughs, but I will say mentally, like my mental strength, I think it's like been a little bit out of practice, but I was very mentally just like really strong and I really leaned into that, I think. And I just didn't let things like phase me and bother me on the outside, I guess. Inside, I was always like so nervous. I thought I was going to be sick and like all those things. My mom always kind of said, like, pretend you're a horse at a horse race. You can apply that to so many things, everything in life, because what it really kind of means is like, you can only control the controllables, your controllables, right? So it's, why am I going to be so worried about what my competitor's routine is going to be like or how she does? Because I can't control her routine, and I certainly can't control what the judges are going to give her, right? So the only thing I'm doing is I'm now stressing out about that and not focusing on myself and my routine, you know? So I think like that was really like important when I finally processed and like it actually clicked in my head, because I think a lot of times we tend to, sure, we all have our own goals, but it's kind of like digging deeper and trying to understand why. Like, why do we want to win? Why do we want to achieve this like certain thing? Like, it's a feeling that you feel, right? And, or, you know, whatever that is for every individual. And I think when I started trying to think that way versus I just want to beat her or be better than, you know, it's like, it's not about them, you know, it's has
about
nothing
you.
to do. It's about you. Yeah. And so I try to remember that in life too. It's harder, I think, when there's other variables and like other people but that's not like, you can't use that as an excuse, you know? And I think if you can just kind of understand like your, not motive, but kind of like your why. And why is it that you know, want to do that? Or why is it that upset you? Or, you know, something like that. And because at the end of the day, like, it's always because of something, right? Like we don't just like feel a certain way or want to do something for just like no reason, really. And yeah, so I think like gymnastics really did teach me a lot of those things without me realizing it then. Like, I was just going through the motions. I always wanted to major in psychology because I just am so interested in how the mind kind of works. And, you know, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like so many life lessons you've been able to extrapolate out of those experiences. That's amazing.
No, for sure. Yeah. But then there's the perfectionism and like, you know, all of that and trying to be, you know, when you achieve something at such a young age. And I remember all of a sudden on the podium, like being kind of scared and having this fear of like, wait a second, okay, I'm supposed to be like really happy. And I was, but I had this like conflicting feeling of, okay, but now what? Like this is all I ever wanted. I remember sitting in my bed at my, you know, my parents' house, like growing up. And I remember just like sitting there, like trying to fall asleep and being like, telling myself, I just like have this vivid memory of, if I can just do that, I will be happy for the rest of my life. Don't get me wrong. It was great. It was amazing, but it was like also so sad to kind of like look back at that and, you know, think that was going to make me happy for the rest of my life. Like, I mean,
you were 18 at the time.
Yeah.
Right?
And also
you're 18 years old.
I was like 18, just turned 18, but really like probably a younger teenager, like with life experiences. And I didn't even think like 2009, like the January, like did not exist in my mind. Like I not once ever thought of that year. Like it was always 2008. And that was a scary, I'm like big on New Year's Eve and like it's very big in like our culture and like you spend it with your family and like I've only ever spent one New Year's Eve without my family, even to this day. And I remember though that year I was like, this is weird. Like, what do I do? Like, what is life? You know,
what do I do now? Right.
Yeah. And so I think again, it showed me that if you work hard and if you have a goal, like all those things, right? Or you can achieve the things that you want to. But at the same time, it was like this overwhelming, scary kind of feeling. And I didn't know any different or better, I guess, at that age, but like I allowed it to kind of take over my life and define, you know, myself by that one thing. And for so long, you know, and I think like it's so important to, you know, not do that with anything, right? Like with a relationship, a job title, a salary, a success or like whatever you want to think, like those are just things that we do, right? And I think when I finally realized, okay, I'm not the gymnast, like I did gymnastics. And I think like there's such a difference in that. And it's really saying the same thing. But like when you say I'm a gymnast or the gymnast, like you're defining yourself, like you're putting yourself in that little box. And so, you know, there's so many different like things that are incredible about every single human. And we're doing that to ourselves. You know, we're kind of putting ourselves in that box. And so I had to like kind of start shifting my mentality to saying, and not even mentality, but just, oh yeah, I did gymnastics. Yeah, it was great. You're kind of like downplaying it, I guess, a little bit, but Otherwise,
but it's
like,
not your whole person. I've absolutely felt that way too. I mean, I think particularly because I ran TaskRabbit for so long, I felt like it was my identity.
Your identity.
And when I sold the company, like it's supposed to be a happy, exciting moment. I was literally on the board call voting yes to sell the company to IKEA. And I was in tears because I was like, but now what?
Yeah. Wow. I just got like goosebumps. Like it's such a similar, when you start a business,
you work
like that's
so
end goal,
hard,
right? Yeah.
Towards. Yeah. Absolutely. I love you sharing that moment with us about being on the podium and having that conflicting feeling, because I do think
and like similar
will
to you,
resonate.
Yes. And like you being
it'll
on
resonate
that
with so many people. Absolutely.
And it's okay to, I think so often we suppress whatever feeling or emotion that we think we're not supposed to be feeling in that moment. So, you have so many people telling you like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Like you should be so happy. And it's like, I am, like, don't get me wrong. Like I really am. I'm proud. It's a moment that I will forever be proud of.
Right.
And similar for you, like you worked so hard to be able to do that. But at the same time, like it's okay to also be sad. And, you're letting something go, a huge chunk of your life and everything that your heart and soul, and you pour into it. And I think like that's also just important to kind of remember that, sure, everyone's telling you to be happy, and that doesn't mean like you're not, but it's okay to feel, confused even, or feel different things. And, but also important to kind of feel those feelings, because I feel like if you just suppress them, then that's kind of when
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, at the time, 2008, you shattered this age narrative for gymnastics, right? You weren't actually the favorite to win, and you did.
No, I was too old.
You were right. 18. You're too old at 18. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right?
It is crazy. Yeah.
You broke the mold, and as you were doing it, I'm just curious. Did you feel like you were breaking out, or did you feel like you were surviving the structure that was there? Yeah.
I was totally surviving. And like, I hate that I felt that way. Because now looking back, I mean, that 18 is young, in like mid-20s. I mean, 18 is young regardless of anything.
For everyone. Doing anything.
Not just like a gymnast.
But
it was 16 was the quote unquote perfect age. But again, what is perfect? Like, what does that even mean? And it's the same thing as, you were saying, like starting a family and all of that. And it's who says that, just because
who decides these things, right?
That? And it's like, just because maybe somebody else started a family at this age, or maybe somebody else won the Olympics at this age, like we're all so different that, you can't compare your life and your journey and your everything to somebody else. But it got to me a little bit towards the end when I got injured the year before. And so I think that was kind of the first time that I started, people were like, oh, like she's too old, she's too injured. Like there's girls that are just better than her. And I'm like, listen, like, okay, I'm fine with the like better than her. Like that's okay. I can't control that. But like, what gives you the right to kind of say that you're not in the gym 7 hours a day, 6 days a week with me. Like you don't see what I'm doing. Why am I all of a sudden too old when for 4 years prior, every single competition, like I won every nationals, I was like the favorite, and all of a sudden I'm now too old, So it was the first time that I was like, wait a second. Again, this goes back to like, why did I feel that way? Why was I hurt by it? I think I knew, I had my worst competition season that year because I was injured. Honestly, I think it was a combination of, being a people pleaser. Like I'm definitely a people pleaser. And so I thought, wait a second, I don't need to be like talked about, but why are people being negative and all of a sudden not believing in me when like I believe in myself still? Like why don't they? Like what do they know? And I think I started letting that affect me a little bit. And I remember my dad, he made this rule and he said, anytime we had to do interviews, like whatever, you have to do your job and do the interviews. But he had a rule that I was never allowed to read the interview or the article about myself or whatever I gave, whether it was negative or positive, because they were both going to affect you. Like if it was negative, negative words are hurtful and they can affect you. And like, especially if your confidence is down. And then the opposite, if it's, you're going into the Olympics and you're the star and you're supposed to win, like that really can get to you. It's like the overhyping yourself up. And so again, this was pre-social media. Thank God, because
Thank God, right?
I don't know how, I truly don't know how they do it now. Everything is so instant. Yeah. And like people's opinions that don't matter, by the way. Like, love everyone out there and on social, but it can really control your mind. And then your mind obviously controls your performance. So I think that was kind of the first time where I was like, okay, got it. You guys don't believe, like, that's fine. And also like, I don't even know like who like they were, it was just like chatter. It was like one person, then another person, and then like NBC broadcast. And I was just like, wait, what? And I think I remember my dad saying, that's fine. Let them say what they want. Like, that's okay. Like, that doesn't control like what we do in the gym. And so like, don't let that control you, And I was like, okay. It was hard for a teenager, it was hard. I mean, it's hard for anybody, but I think those little / big kind of lessons in the moment, like I didn't know that I'd, be taking them with me for the rest of my life, but it certainly helped. It was hard at first, but it certainly made, my skin a little thicker, and it made me want it not to prove to them, but made me like reignite, my own kind of desire and like want for, being successful, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is another life lesson to take with you, right? It's like, cancel out the noise. What are you really going to focus on? What really matters, right? And look internally. And what matters is what you decide. What matters,
not
right?
what they, because are they selling the company? Are they competing on the beam that's 4 inches wide? No, So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it's hard because I've kind of learned or believed that like a human, in just like we all kind of want to be respected, loved, liked, whatever, and like positive things about you. I think that anybody would say that. And so, when it's the opposite, it certainly can affect you. And it's not like great to hear some of those things, but I think it's the importance of going back to like kind of what I was talking about at the beginning, your why. And truly remembering like why you're doing this. And, because that's what's going to get you through those days when nobody else believes in you, but like you have to believe in yourself, your product, your routine, whatever it is. And remember why you're even doing it in the first place.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have that mental capacity that's so strong, that focus. And I want to jump ahead to that next 4 years. So the 2012 Olympic trials. Now you've called this, one of your defining moments of your career. You were on the beam, you fell off, you got back on.
It truly was the defining moment, I think, for me, because so 4 years later, I guess, now you're going in as the reigning Olympic all-around champion and a lot more eyes are on you. No pressure. Right. And so, before, sure, there's expectations, but there's not this title that you have to perform and live up to. And some of it was just, I put that on myself, and, some was certainly just, how the world works, I guess. And on my best event, I fell flat on my face. And I remember just thinking, okay, what am I doing down here? It happened so fast. In like split of a second. Immediately thinking how I was like embarrassed, mortified, I just wanted to crawl underneath the podium. I wanted to be done. I knew that I wasn't going to make that Olympic team. But at the same time, I immediately remembered my parents always teaching me that no matter what you do, like you always have to finish what you've started. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, finishing is going to end with a gold medal and, or success or whatever, but something will come from it. And just the importance in life, right? Like don't give up halfway. And even if it's hard, or even if you want to, like just push through and you'll learn something from it. And so I had 30 seconds to get back on the bar and then like you're disqualified basically. And I like, it all happened. It was like, it was in slow motion, but so fast. I didn't even process or understand really what was happening. And I got back up, finished my routine knowing that it didn't matter anymore. Like I could have walked off. My dad, actually, the dad instinct in him kicked in, and he was like not my coach. And he was like, let's just be done. Like he wanted me to just be like safe and healthy and be done, because it really didn't matter. And I knew that was either going to be my last competition of my entire life, or I would make the Olympics and then move on with life. And so, yeah, he so badly just wanted me to be like safe. And, I didn't, knock on wood, like I didn't have any major injury. Besides the one before the Olympics, it was like my own fault. I was on the trampoline, rolled my ankle. And that was all because of the training that the conditioning and just the way that he coached. And so he was just like, just be done. Like, please, like be done. We've almost made it. And so I wanted to finish kind of on my own terms. And I got up, I finished my routine. And when I landed on my feet, I remember I looked around and all of a sudden 20,000 people were on their feet. And I'm thinking, I wonder who just went on, on a different event, because couldn't even process or would never have thought in a million years that 20,000 people were standing on their feet for me or that routine.
They were so proud of you for getting up and doing it.
But to be fair, they were on their feet. That was my first standing ovation in my entire life and career for the worst routine of my entire life and career. I kind of taught myself for some reason. My parents did not instill this in me, but for some reason I always thought that people were only going to love and support me if I was the best, if I won, if I landed on my feet, if I, had the best routine. Because in my mind, why would they clap or cheer for me if I'm falling on my face? No one wants to clap or cheer for that. You want to clap and cheer for when somebody does great. And so, up until that moment, I thought that that was people were only going to love me because I was the best, And when I fell, and then when I got back up and I finished my routine and they were on their feet, I didn't realize it then, but it became the defining moment, because what I realized was, there's people are still going to love you and support you and cheer for you, even if you fall on your face. And it's not about the outcome. It's about picking yourself up. It's about, finishing what you've started and landing on your feet after, because we're all going to either figuratively or literally fall on our face in life. And how do you pick yourself up and how do you keep going? You have to do that. And you can't just crawl underneath the podium as much as you want to and hide and whatever, but the courage and I think strength, both mentally, physically, emotionally, ego, everything was kind of just in front of millions watching. It was a very vulnerable moment. It's probably best I didn't process it then, because I just wanted to I had 30. I remember thinking oh my God, 28, 29. I was counting my head. And it just really, truly made me realize that we will never be defined by a salary, a title, a relationship, a company, a gold medal. None of those, yes, they're incredible things, all of them, but they don't define who we are. They're just something that we've done. It's not who we are at the core. And I think up until that moment, I truly didn't, I would have never believed that. If I didn't have the fall on my face, I just would have thought, no, nobody would ever clap and cheer, let alone stand on their feet. Because when I won the Olympics, nobody was standing on their feet. Sure, people were clapping.
Funny how that works.
Congratulations. Yeah, they were happy, but no, because, it's not relatable too. It's nobody can really, but two sides to that. It's not relatable because it's just it's so rare that things just go absolutely perfect. And it was just this fairy tale moment. It was a combination of everything, obviously, the work, the planning, everything that went into that. And then of course, a little bit of luck was, has to be on your side for all the stars to align. But it's not necessarily something that people can relate to or want to relate to, because they're not necessarily going to have a gold medal winning moment, whether it's literally or figuratively, or selling, a company but what everybody will have is the fall on your face moment.
Yes.
And
yes.
And we all will. You'll have another one.
Yes.
I've had plenty since. And
plenty
I think that's important to talk about sometimes too. And especially in this world that we live in that's so curated and so filtered and so not necessarily maybe fake, but like curated. And like we put out what we want others to see or perceive or whatever it is that image is. And I think like that's, it's the world we live in, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily teach anybody anything. It doesn't inspire, people to be the best versions of themselves when you're just constantly trying to achieve or attain something that you're not. And so, yeah, I think that moment that I had for myself personally, it just made me realize that you're not defined by a gold medal or a routine. People are still going to cheer for you and love you and support you. And I think that's kind of what I needed, especially as I was like closing, the chapter and moving on with my life, because that was a fear, now what, it was even more so now what, because it was like really, I was, moving on. It was just another like life lesson that I kind of take with me and probably will forever.
I remember watching that moment and I remember, feeling so proud that you got up. But I think it was like we saw your instinct to keep going. We saw the training and we saw you. Like we really saw you in that moment. And I think people as humans, right? We connect with that.
Yeah, thank you, first of all. I think moments like that, it humanizes us, right? And I think especially as, the more successful that you are in whatever your path is, the more success that you kind of achieve, the less human you are. And I think when you have a fall on your face moment, it reminds not only like yourself, but everybody that we're all just human and we're all just trying our best, right? And if you can say that you're doing your best, like that's all you can do, because what your best and my best is very different, right? And it's nobody's like best is like the same. And so I think like that is just so important. Yeah.
I mean, on that point, you mentioned the judges for gymnastics. It's very subjective, right? So what did that teach you navigating the subjectivity, especially as a woman in the sport? What are your takeaways from that?
I think I was so young that I didn't really, I saw the scores and like the subjectivity from numbers. I didn't realize that it was like this whole other world of like everything else, from the second you walk onto the competition floor to like, what leotard you're wearing, how you present to the judges, how you stand. People were always not making fun, but like kind of laugh. Like, why do you guys always like present to the judges and march from one event to the other? And it's like, because they're judging everything. It is from
all the
start
time.
to yes. They're in our trainings before we ever step foot. Yeah. Everyone thought that was so interesting. And it's so normal for us that, and it is interesting because it's not fair when you actually think about it, because what they do is they sit there and they kind of write down your routines, and especially when at like bigger competitions, like your body kind of like, if you are struggling with a certain skill, or if like your knees are bent on one skill consistently over and over again, like they're taking note of that deduction and they like, they point that out.
They're looking for it.
Yes. And so then, and this is what my dad always said was, you can't just like try harder when it matters in competition, because like it becomes muscle memory. And even if you do try harder and all of a sudden your knees are not bent and they're straight, the judge, because they were watching, they still see it and they remember it as being bent. Yeah. And so they'll like innately kind of take the deduction. Yeah. So it's kind of wild. The moment that I realized how subjective it actually was 2 years before the Olympics at a World Championships, the uneven bar finals, and I got silver, and silver's great. But as we were gearing up towards, the Olympic year, after the competition was over, my dad asked the head judge, like, just out of curiosity, what was it? Was it like, as we look ahead to like constructive criticism or feedback, I guess. And that was very like normal, obviously, after the competition was done. And she looked at him and literally said, nothing. I just liked the other girl better. So
Wow.
how do you then
Yeah.
explain that to like a 15 or 16-year-old, you
Oh,
know? And
right.
and he didn't tell me that till like later in life, but
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just, that is a great example. And it goes back to controlling your controllables, because I can't get somebody to like me more and, you know, and win for that reason. And so, but I think then the other side of it, obviously, you know, you're in front of millions of people in a leotard, and, you know, it's the body, you know, perception and image, and just like the image as a whole. And yeah, it's all judged, every single thing, both from like the judges and then like the world and
the world.
And that was very new. The world part was new for me, because the judges, like, I just was at that point, I was so unfazed, because it becomes muscle memory. Like, you walk into the arena and like, you don't even think about it. You just like, you're on autopilot a little bit. And so it wasn't like weird. Like, I think like looking back at it, when people like ask questions, I'm like, that is very strange that we would do that. Like, you know, we would just like stand there like soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, but if you go back and watch, like every single athlete is like that. Like, you just, it's kind of just the way of that world in a weird way. And I don't know like why or how or whatever, but yeah, I think it's, and there's something to it. Yeah. There's something to, you know, trying, like being like putting effort in and doing your best. I think that was like taking it to like an extreme when like you're judged based on like certain things. But I do think a little bit in life, like, you know, it is good to put effort into things and to show up and like to try your best if you're walking into a meeting, and like just being respectful. And so, yes, like I think some of those things are or like all the things I just said are like important things, but you know, obviously in a sport like gymnastics that's like judged to like a score, it becomes a little much. Yeah.
So if you could rewrite one unspoken rule inside elite gymnastics, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. Nobody's ever asked me that question.
I feel like this is all about breaking these precedents, right?
No,
and it's
I know.
like you
It's
just
so
described
great.
this whole subjectivity and like, I mean, this world that, you know, we don't see. Many of us don't see.
It's so interesting being on the other side. Yeah. Because, and then just talking about it, because it's again, so normal that I'm like, wait, why is that weird that the judge is in our training? Like, you know, it's like, it's just so like normal. Oh gosh. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, I think like that, for example, is a good one. Like why are like, they're helping themselves out by like they get like they shouldn't be allowed to judge, because like, that's also part of it. Like, we can all be, you know, the best on a certain day in training when there's no pressure and there's no this, there's no that. But that is part of the sport, is showing up when it matters. And it's like the one day, the one moment, you don't get another take, you don't get another try. You can't say, judges, hold on, let me start that over. But they're kind of allowing that for themselves when you think about it. Like, they're kind of, because it's their job also. It's not that easy. Like, they have to, you know, calculate the start value, and it gets so complicated now with like the scoring system in gymnastics.
Can only imagine.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not even going to get into that, but but like, there is a lot, and they have to be, this is like crazy too. I didn't know, but they have to fall within a range of each other.
Oh, really?
So there's no, like, the American judge isn't like trying to like help her, you know, her athletes out. And if they don't fall within like a certain range, like, they can be like penalized, and then they can like be removed from being an Olympic judge. Like, it's pretty like intense on their end. But I also think like that's part of it. Like, why should they get to practice like in like, you know, CR routines? So yeah, I would say, I don't know.
I like that. That's a good one.
Cause like, if we have to just like, like perform like when there's pressure and like, then they should too.
Right. I agree. So in gymnastics, you retire before most people even start their careers. But you, Nastia, you did not stop. You completely repurposed. You have been working hard at a lot of different things. Let's talk about what has come next. I'm curious, when you look at sort of your career and moving ahead, what's one belief about yourself or the world that you feel like you had to unlearn after the gymnastics?
trying to be perfect. Perfectionism is such a fine line. I think so much of like trying to be perfect gets us to, achieving those things. But at the same time, it can be debilitating in so many ways in life. And, I've experienced it myself, like starting things that you didn't train 7 hours a day or 6 days a week for your whole life
for years.
for years. And it can be scary, right? So it's scary because for multiple reasons, but that's why, again, trying to understand like, why is it scary? Is it because you're like scared you're going to mess up or fail or whatever? Or is it the unknown? And it's not that I like need to be perfect or I don't need people to think that I'm perfect. It's this bar that I've kind of set for myself. Why do something if you're not going to do it like to your best? And I think that is like it was the way I was raised. It was and I don't, blame or fault anybody. It was just, I knew that I had to do that in order to achieve the thing that I wanted to. And it worked. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, well, if it worked then, why wouldn't it work for other things? Why don't I keep doing that? And you can't really do that. But I think I've started to kind of tell myself sometimes, like done is better than perfect. And that has kind of helped me a little bit. The perfectionism in whatever is still, at the core, like I have to constantly tell myself like, it's okay, like to let things go or like, and it's like it's not for somebody. It's not for like an image or anything. It's truly just like, in my mind, it's so instilled in me. Like if you're going to do something, do it well. And so I think like that's probably the like one thing that I would say like, and then just not doing well with, not achieving something that you wanted to. Everything was in my control kind of. And if I had a bad competition and if I didn't win, like that's on me. I know what I need to do to go back the next time and to win. And that doesn't necessarily work for everything else in life when, it just doesn't. And I think that I've had to really, unlearn that part and kind of know that that's not life. Like I learned so much through my career and through gymnastics that has obviously helped me in so many ways. When you do something for over 23, 24 years, it's like, it's not just like something you think or do, it's ingrained in you. It's kind of who you are. So trying to not necessarily change fully who you are, but teach yourself other things too.
Yeah. Bringing your best self to something doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. So I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, you've launched a brand, a competition, a community. What is driving you now that winning isn't the metric or getting scored isn't the metric?
Thank gosh, actually, like I'm like, so it's
such a relief.
The score, it's funny because the perfectionism obviously never fully went away, but the scoring, like to the point where Soul Cycle and Flywheel, like I could not do Flywheel because there's a scoreboard at the top and everyone's trying to win. And Soul Cycle, like when I lived in New York, and Soul Cycle, like you just go in and you do it for yourself. And
I am also a Soul Cycle girl.
Yeah. Yes. And so I was like, I remember I lived closer to a flight. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go, and both great places. But I remember this is not for me. And then everybody sees your score and then people expect you because you're not. And I was just like, this is not for me. It's funny. I'm not very competitive. Anymore. Of course, we all want to be the best and win at like a game or whatever, little things, but I'm fine with not being the best. Like it's okay. I think I would say, the sport obviously gave me so much, and I was so lucky to have so many incredible mentors throughout my life and career, both in gymnastics and then, even after gymnastics in life. And I feel, if I'm able to, help inspire or motivate or, something for a girl, a boy, like anybody out there. That's kind of always been my kind of purpose and passion of trying to make others believe they are the best version of themselves or how to get to that point, because we all have it within us. It's there, it exists. Yep. It's not something that I have to like hand to somebody, but it's that like limiting belief that we sometimes have. And so with the gymnastics competition that I created, it's giving these young girls a moment to, to feel like, as special as they actually are. And so often in life, like we don't have those moments. And so it's like celebrating them and spending a weekend with 30 of them every year and just kind of like just being a normal, like, we just like talk like girls. It humanizes, I think, all of us. And then at the same time, building others up is so important to me. And I think like we could all do more of that in just life in our everyday. And so if I'm like, I was given obviously this opportunity to do whatever I wanted with that. And so to me, like, it's the moments that I get 2, 3, 4 years later that they, are just graduated college and they competed for the university and they were, roommates and they met for the first time at the Nastia Liukin Cup and now they're best friends. And it's just like, it's like chill moments like that it's like they would have never met and become best friends and like decided to commit to the same college and spend 4 years and the rest of their life together had it not been for the Nastia Liukin Cup. And so it's stuff like that it's not about a title. It's not about a salary, a dollar amount. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with just that feeling and seeing others kind of rise and just, I was so lucky to have that moment that I had. And so I'm like, if I can try to help do that for somebody else, then why not?
I mean, you are such an incredible role model for so many, in so many different ways too. If you could rewrite the script for what success looks like after a big moment, what would the script say?
I would say to first, like, just be present and actually, not that I wasn't present and didn't enjoy the moment, but I think I put so much pressure on myself after that. Like now it was, you have to live up to that expectation. You're still the same person, and it's like, you don't need to be different. Like you don't, just because you have like this level or like this level of success or title or whatever, like, or you can put something next to your name, like it doesn't change who you are. My parents really instilled that in me, but I think sometimes, we get lost in this world of, forgetting that. And I think just at your core, remembering like your core values. In my mind, success isn't just, numbers on a paper or a certificate or a check or a medal or any of those things. Like, sure, it's part of it, but we can all define success differently, and what success looks like to you and me might be different. And so I think it's even more so, important to me to, be a better person than, have like a higher medal count. I think sometimes, we get lost in the stats and the amount or like whatever it is because we're like competitive and we, we're hard workers and all of those things that we're basically taught our whole life to like become. And then when you become it, it's kind of like, you just like kind of almost sometimes forget like your purpose or your why or, and you get, you can get like wrapped up in it and you can let it define you. And that doesn't necessarily mean like put a check by it and move on, celebrate it, but also, I guess just like not letting yourself, but others also, define a success for you.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I love that. I feel like people have underestimated you like throughout your entire career. Are there areas of your life that you still feel like people underestimate about you?
Yeah, that's really funny that you bring that up. It's so interesting because I think in a lot of areas, but I didn't necessarily realize it because I was also underestimating myself because of like, I always thought that, I had to be good at something, I had to train 7 hours a day, 6 days a week for 20 plus years. And so like that to me was like, I would never underestimate myself in that because I knew like what my capability was there. But with everything else in life, you know, we're all just learning. We're all just trying our best. Going to school and like graduating and was like super important for me. My dad always said, like, you know, at the end of the day, your gymnastics career is only going to take you so far, and education will stick with you for the rest of your life. Obviously, you know, who knows, like times have already started to change a little bit, but like that was and still is important to me. Even with that though, it's like, you know, sometimes you go into a meeting and it's that like perception thing again of being judged, and like, especially being like a female, I do a lot of very different things. And so it's like two things can be true. You know, you can still like fashion and like what you look like, or like, you know, put effort into like how you dress or doing your hair and makeup, and also being able to like have a real conversation with, you know, in a boardroom. And I think like sometimes, you know, we shrink ourselves a little bit. And I think that I have had to really put in effort in realizing, okay, if I'm in this room, that means I belong, you know? And I think that it's not always easy to do, especially I think for me, I always had some, like my dad, my coach, my team, you know, somebody there with me. And I look sometimes to like seeing what the right answer, you know, and it's like, there is no right or wrong, like just be you. There's a reason that you're there. I guess that's what I would say.
I love that. I love that. If you could go back to that 18-year-old girl on the podium in Beijing, what would you whisper into her ear?
Oh gosh.
With all the wisdom that you've collected since then, there's so much.
I mean, gosh, I don't know. I would just say, ever since I was a little girl, I remember, you know, when I was 9, I wanted to be 10 to be double digits. And then I wanted to be 13 to be a teenager. And then I wanted to be 16 to drive. And it was just like rushing through, like not for any real reason. And it's just, you know, be present in the now, and not just like the good moments, but also the bad, like feel what you feel and kind of go through those versus just like trying to like push them away or like just like sprint through them. Like those are the moments that are going to make you stronger and better and appreciate more. And then I guess also, you know, that you're enough. Like you're enough without that. Even if you don't achieve anything bigger, better, or whatever than like that. Because that was my fear. Like I remember thinking too, like, what if this is the moment that I look back on when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old and think like that was the greatest thing of my life? Like, I don't necessarily know if that's what I want that to be, you know, I want to have other things that I'm proud of, but that was such a high moment that I had to kind of learn that you can't compare, you know, it's like, you're never going to I mean, just so many like moments in life. I'm sure like you've had 4 kids, like you can't compare the kids or like the moments or any of those things. Like they're equally as important. They're equally as like different. And so I've tried and I've tried to be that way with like moments in my life too, because I think when you, similar probably to you, when you achieve like this level of success and something that you wanted to do so badly, it's almost like everything has to like live up to that. And it's not going to, and not in a negative, like, you know, pessimistic kind of way, but just in a way, like you can't compare. That's one thing. And this is the other. And so again, it's that feeling, right? So it's like not necessarily measuring your success by something, but measuring like how it made you feel, or so I think that's what I would say.
For me too, it's like you achieve this moment, and for me, like selling TaskRabbit as an example, and then after that I was always so afraid to what am I going to do next, and what is that going to look like, and will it be as successful, and people have these expectations, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, the whole thing. I know.
Well, I'm going to have to have you on my podcast soon, because I need to ask you all the questions too. I know. No, it's it really is like, it's the greatest thing. And I always feel like I have to preface by saying that, because people are like, oh, it must be so hard. Like you won the Olympics. And it's like, No, that's not what I'm like what I'm trying to say. Like, I am so proud of that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like life defining unless you let it become that, you know? And it's like, you can be proud of that forever. Like, you absolutely can, but you also can be excited for new things that aren't going to be what others might think as like just as successful, you know? And I think it's the perception that we put on for ourselves too.
Yeah. So looking ahead.
Yes.
To LA in 2028.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We are hosting the Olympics here in Los Angeles. What are your hopes and dreams for the sport at this next Olympics?
Honestly, I'm just excited for the next generation. I think when I look back to, you know, when I was a little girl, and so Atlanta, the 96 Olympics were kind of the games that I remember. I was like the first time that I was sitting on the couch watching, you know, the Magnificent Seven, and it was like USA chanting, and they won the gold. And I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to do that. And I always say, if I could have, not that I wanted to like change my Olympics in any way, but the only thing that would have made it like even more special if it was like at home, right? And so I think there's just something like so special about, you know, I've never obviously competed in a home games, but you know, to have people just excited and cheering and just in general, I think the Olympics is so unique where I don't think there's really anything else in the world that, you know, for 2 weeks can unite the entire world, no matter what your political beliefs, religious beliefs, any beliefs. Like, you put those aside and you're there like united for one reason and one thing and one goal. And it's like so powerful, regardless of if you're competing or just there, like you feel this energy. And so I truly hope that, you know, that whoever is, you know, there watching, young, old, whatever, like they're inspired to do something like that they have wanted to do. And whether it's a sport, whether it's selling a company, whatever it is, it's just, there's something about, you know, seeing and feeling that energy that is just so special. So I'm excited. I think, you know, being able to be part of, you know, something that I've always said, it's something that's bigger and greater than yourself, you know, and so you're doing it for everybody else, and to hopefully, you know, for all these athletes too, to have games, and not just the athletes, but everybody here, to have something that, you know, we'll be talking about for hundreds of years. And yeah, it's really, really special.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I love
I know.
the
And
Olympics.
I mean, people are always, you know, the traffic, this, that, but it's like, you know, that's like with anything and everywhere in life. And so you work with your variables and you do the best. And I think it's the way that we all choose to see life. And if you choose to see it with excitement and passion, and I think it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, Nastia, you are such an inspiration. Thank you for this conversation. You've shared so much about your Olympic highs, but also your human moments. And that's what I'm going to remember most from this conversation.
Thank you.
So
I can't wait to hear yours, because I want to have you on and hear all about, I'm sure you've told all your stories, but I would love to do that soon.
I'll save some secret ones for you.
Perfect. Yes. Some exclusives.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was Nastia Liukin. From pushing through injuries to standing tall in a subjective sport to showing us what reinvention really looks like, Nastia has broken more than athletic precedents. She's redefined grace, grit, and what it means to begin again. And if you know someone who is trailblazing a unique path, I want to hear their story. You can send me a note on my website, breakingprecedent.com. Until next time, I'm Leah Solivan.